Okay. Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you very much, Hicham, for your kind words. It's very nice to be with you this afternoon for us, and I'm very pleased to meet you again since the first meeting we had together in Beijing. This was in the prehistorical times, I mean, before the COVID. The situation is still pretty tense in Beijing regarding the COVID, but since the vaccinations are starting, I hope we will see the light or some light at the end of the tunnel very soon. So it's very unfortunate that we meet only electronically today, but it's better than nothing. I'm here with Voiko, who we've been working together for now more than 18 months. And Voiko will help me answer questions after my short presentation. So today, I will tell you a few words about the state of play of our cooperation in research and innovation with China. And I would like to apologize in advance because we have another video conference with Brussels, which was planned even before yours, so we will have to leave around 5. Maybe two parts in what I would like to tell you today. One is about what we did in the past and up to recently, and the second one about the future and Horizon Europe. So first of all, some figures about Horizon 2020. So overall, the framework program has funded more than 32,000 projects with 162,000 participation from almost every country around the world. The first participant in the work program, in the framework program, was as before, the CNRS, the French Centre National pour la Recherche Scientifique, that have been involved in 1,700 projects for a value of about 1 billion euros that they received from the framework program. As you remember, Commissioner Moedas in 2016 characterized the framework program with the 3 O's, so open science, open innovation, and open to the world. In this open to the world dimension, China took a great advantage of this openness. And China was again our number 2 partner after the US in terms of number of participation. So we have recorded about 600 participation from China in 270 projects. And as far as your area is concerned, in health, we have recorded 21 participation from Chinese entities without participation in IMI. 5 participations in the coronavirus first calls of proposals, 3 participation in health infrastructures, and 13 participation in the other dimensions of the health work programs. And in addition, there were 5 participation of Chinese entities in 2 projects for the GTI IMI. So China has been an important partner in the framework program, as it used to be already in the framework program 7. Some important elements in our view that facilitated certainly the participation of China in the framework program was what we call the flagship initiative, where we agreed with the Ministry of Science and Technology, the Ministry of Industry, and the National Science Foundation of China to focus our cooperation more on some subjects. And so these 5 flagship were about food and agriculture, urbanization, surface transport, aviation, and biotechnologies for health and the environment. So health was not at that time a flagship initiative, because you may remember that our health directorate wanted to involve China in multilateral initiative. The second important element that facilitated the participation of Chinese entities in Horizon 2020 were the co-funding mechanisms that were set up by MIIT, Ministry of Industry, and NSFC. So most funded the first three flagship initiatives I mentioned, so FAB, urbanization, and surface transport. MIIT co-funded the project in the field of aviation and NSFC in the field of biotech for the environment. If there are some questions, Voiko could tell you more about this CFM and the results of this CFM, the co-funding mechanism, but also on the flagship initiatives. What about the future? Alors, the future lays with Horizon Europe. As you know, this program is still under discussion, even if over the last few months, there were a lot of progress recorded. So we know now that the amount of the program will be around 95.5 billion euros, which is very close to what the Commission proposed at the very beginning of the preparation of the program more than 2 years ago. The program, even if not yet fully endorsed by the European Parliament, but was officially launched by the Portuguese presidency in January. And it was recently announced by our Director General, Jean-Éric Paquet, that we'll have an official launch of Horizon Europe on the occasion of the Research and Innovation Days that will this year take place on the 23rd and 24th of June, when they were usually organized in September, October. But nevertheless, the other important element which now seems to be agreed upon by everybody is the structure of the future program. So there are, as you know, on one side, the specific program on defense that will fund the military side. But we will focus on the specific program to implement Horizon Europe in the EIT in the field of non-military programs. So they will have 3 pillars, as they used to have also in Horizon 2020. The first one will deal with excellent science, when we will retrieve the ERC schemes, Marie-Sklodowska reactions, and research infrastructures. The second pillar will be about challenges, and there are now 6 global challenges that has been identified, from health to digital to food and so on. And the fourth pillar will be dedicated to innovation, and it will be much more developed than the previous one under Horizon 2020. And in addition to the framework program and this military and civil research and innovation dimension, they will have also the Euratom program with fusion, fission, and some funding also for the Joint Research Center. So you can find all this on the website of Horizon Europe. In addition, they will also have 5 missions, which will be some kind of horizontal topics that aim at delivering very concrete results for society at the end of Horizon Europe. And they are linked to adaptation to climate change, cancer, climate neutral and smart cities, healthy ocean, sea and inland waters, and soil, health and food. You may have seen in the press over the last few days that the European Research Council has already opened some calls, and the European Innovation Council will soon issue also some calls. The other calls will be open. Frankly speaking, I don't know exactly when. We heard between end of April, I mean months of April and June. So the date, I suppose, will be precise in the coming weeks. And this will be for 2021 and 2022 work programs. As far as international cooperation is concerned in Horizon Europe, it shouldn't be very different from Horizon 2020. But there is a new strategy for international cooperation under preparation, and for the time being, we cannot disclose the contents, but it should also come pretty soon. And the important element in terms of international cooperation are the new modalities for associations. You may have heard that associations will be pretty different in the way that the contributions from the associated countries will be balanced over years to make sure that they don't pay too much, much more than they receive, or vice versa. And very importantly for international cooperation, other countries around the world, and not only those who are geographically around Europe, could apply or could become associated countries if they request so. And for the time being, there are 5 countries who have verbally expressed some interest, which are Japan, Korea, Australia, New Zealand, Singapore, and Canada. In fact, 6, not 5. There are some conditions for these countries to become associated. One of those being that it's, of course, very good in terms of research and innovation, but also it respects democratic rules. So China, de facto, even if it would be interested, which is not the case, but would not be eligible. So to prepare our collaboration with China in research and innovation under Horizon Europe, and to take into account the recent development, let's say, over the last 2 years since the communication of March 2019, we are preparing what we call a joint roadmap for our collaboration with China in research and innovation. So the joint roadmap will be mainly made of 2 pillars. One pillar will be about the future priority areas for cooperation, and the second pillar will be dealing with the framework condition. So this joint roadmap is still under discussion. There is no binding timeline, so we want to have a good agreement and a good accord in line with what we expect for the benefit of Europe. And the third principle is that this joint roadmap will be a rolling roadmap, so we will review it on a regular basis, maybe every other years. So as far as the first pillar is concerned, the priority of future priority areas for cooperation, it shouldn't be too difficult to come up with an agreement with China. It is the Ministry of Science and Technology, by the way, which is our interlocutor on the Chinese side. So we suppose that the former flagship initiatives will continue, but other dimensions may become flagship initiative, and hopefully health could be one of those, and climate change, and so on. But for the time being, the discussions are focusing on the second pillar, which are the framework conditions. So we have already agreed with the Ministry of Science and Technology that this joint roadmap will deal with 13 framework conditions that go from intellectual property right to pre-normative research and standardization, open science, ethics and integrity, reciprocal access to research programs, mobility of researchers, access to public markets, and so on and so forth. So we have also agreed that for each of these 13 framework conditions, the joint roadmap will deal with the definitions of the joint roadmap, with the state of play, so where we are now, with the objectives, what do we want to achieve, different milestones to reach the objectives, and indicators to follow up the implementation of these different framework conditions. So for the time being, there is no joint roadmap. As I said, it's still under discussion. We do not have a fixed agenda to conclude with the negotiations. So therefore, there is no flagship initiatives per se, except that we have entered a couple of calls on food and agriculture, which was one of the previous 5 flagship initiatives. And it was agreed recently between the Minister Wang of the MOST and the Commissioner, Commissioner Gabriel, that we will prepare a flagship initiative on climate change and biodiversity that should, in principle, be pushed into a revision of the 2022 work program. So in conclusion, because time is running, we are now experiencing, or we have been experiencing over the last 2 years, a change of directions in our collaboration with China. And the key word is that we want to rebalance this cooperation. We want it to be reciprocal, to be transparent, to be open, and to achieve a level playing field to work as equal partners between Europe and China. So I just reached the 15 minutes of my presentation. Thank you very much for your very kind attention. And please, if you have any questions, let me know. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Philippe. It's always a pleasure to listen to you. And hopefully we can meet before the end of the year in person again, if we can go to Beijing. Please, I don't see the chat because I'm sharing the slides, but Sonia, Eva, could you tell me if there are any questions? If there are any questions, please use the chat box or raise your hand as you can do in Zoom.
Okay, for the moment, we don't have any typed question in the chat, but maybe someone would like to raise a hand and speak up.
Stefan Stefan from EVI.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
So I'm partner in SENET. So thanks a lot, Philippe. It was very interesting, your presentation, because I think for us it's a little bit confusing sometimes to understand this interaction between, certainly for me, between Europe and China, because depending who you listen to or what you read, sometimes people are enthusiastic. Yes, China, we have to collaborate with China, and people are open. But then on the other hand, very often you read, no, China is a fierce competitor for Europe and for Western Europe, etc. So we should limit this. So it was reassuring to listen to your presentation. So I think we can hope for an interest and to collaborate with China, as you said, maybe on a well-defined basis. But for me, certainly, it was very confusing sometimes because you hear very different things regarding EU-China interactions.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Stefan. You're right. It could seem a bit, sometimes a bit confusing. In fact, it is not. I think the point is that being two among the 3 major scientific powers in the world, China and Europe must continue working together, and on our side, but also on the Chinese side, we really want to continue working together. But we do not want to continue working together at any cost, in quotes. But we want really to have a much more, as I said, balanced collaboration, which means that we work on a level playing field and we work as equal partners, and we open, for example, access to each other's research programs. There are, and you have noticed in my presentation that the framework conditions is really the key for the future of our cooperation. But this framework condition go beyond the simple research and innovation dimension, because we are talking about innovation and therefore we are coming closer to trade issues. So these questions of, for example, intellectual property rights, which is not new, but it's still on the agenda. For example, in China, the IPR legislation is now up to the international standards, but there are still problems in terms of implementation, because the judges are not always trained properly in China, or maybe they are not used to deal with this kind of problems, but also they are really political problems, because it is declared officially by Chinese high-level ranking officials that if there is a problem in IPR issues between two companies, whatever the legislation could be, the decision will be made in favor of the Chinese interest, in favor of the interest of the Communist Party of China. So this is said and written. It's not me inventing this. So this is the kind of issue that would may damage future collaboration. So we want to find a solution, and I don't know when and how it would be implemented by the Chinese side, but this is one of the key questions that these discussions on the framework conditions should come up with a solution. So it will not be tomorrow, and in the meantime, let's see how we could move forward our cooperation with China. But it seems that we are going towards, collaborating on non-technical issues. So yes, we want to cooperate. We need to cooperate. Climate change is, of course, a good example, because China is the first polluter, and doing anything without China would be useless. So that's an area where we want to collaborate with China. But again, provided that if we go for technical issues, provided that the framework conditions are fulfilled. So that's where we are. So you see, it's not confusing. It's not an easy situation, but it's pretty clear. And I would like to refer you to what Jean-Éric Paquet said last September, October, on the occasion of the Research and Innovation Days 2020. There were the full session dedicated to China in collaboration with China, and he was very clear about it. So that's what we are working on.
Thanks a lot, Philippe.
Hope I have answered your question, Stefan.
Yes. Thanks a lot, Philippe.
Okay, so if there is no other question,
excuse me. There is no other. Sonia has raised her hand because Julie, you can't see the screen, I think.
Yeah, exactly. Now I see it. Philippe, if you have time for another question.
Yeah, quickly, okay, please, because.
Sonia, go ahead, please.
Please. Julie, I cannot hear you anymore.
No. It was Sonia actually waved her hand.
It looks Sonia, like there's an issue for Sonia, but I would have a question in that case, because you said that the communication is not confusing. You would like to make sure that the framework conditions are met. Sorry, I didn't introduce myself. My name is Eva Fadila. I'm working also on the SENET project. I was just wondering, well, I understand, of course, that you would like to meet these framework conditions first, and then you will decide on the topics of interest and possibly decide on flagships or other kind of initiatives that would be priority topics. I was just wondering if there's any incentive for the Europeans, like why should they collaborate with China if it is quite complicated, rather than cooperating with only other Europeans or possibly entities from other countries? Thank you.
Okay, I'm not sure I got all your question because the sound was not very good, but we would like to work with China on areas of high interest for Europe, and of course Chinese want to work on areas of high interest also for them. So we are here together with the science councillors of the member states designing a process to try and better inform the different areas in which we could work in the future, and again, provided that the framework conditions will be put straight, to inform better our capitals on which area should be of high interest for Europe. So our idea is to look at different sectors and to look at the strengths and weaknesses of the Chinese research and innovation area in China, and who are the best researchers in these areas. And then it will be up to our capitals to cross the results of these sectoral studies with the opportunities and threats that these different areas could represent, and therefore come up with a well-informed list of topics that we could work on with China. Of course, there are other dimensions to take into account. As we did already in the past, we have to take full account of what the private sector or the European industry is thinking. For example, in the field of aviation, we used to have a very thorough consultation of the aviation industry in Europe before doing anything with the Chinese side, and vice versa. They did the same on their side, and then we crossed the priorities. So we have some mechanisms already to define the joint priority areas. But for the time being, of course, climate change and biodiversity, and certainly health, also after the experience of the pandemics, would be very high on the agenda of both sides.
Okay, thank you very much. It's good to hear that health is on the priority list, possibly.
Yeah. Okay, but let's see what the priority areas will be in the future. We will discuss this in the coming months and together with the framework conditions. So if you allow me, we would have to leave. Of course, first of all, thank you very much for your very kind attention. And secondly, you know that we are here to help, and if you have either at the level of the project or individually, any question, please come to us and we will do our best to answer. Thank you again for your very kind invitation. It was a great pleasure to meet you again, and I hope next time it will be here in Beijing or somewhere in Europe. So I wish you all the best for the rest of your video conference, and again, many thanks.
Thanks
bye-bye,
to you,
everybody.
Philippe.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Have a nice
Bye-bye.
day. Bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you so much. Bye-bye,
Thank
Julie.
you. Bye.
Bye. Thank you.
So now that we've listened to this presentation of Philippe on the general collaboration aspects between the European Union and China, we would like to introduce a bit more in detail our SENET project and the roundtable discussion. As some of you know, so now the SENET project is an H2020 project funded by the European Commission. It was launched beginning of 2019 and will run until the end of this year. We have a consortium of 5 partners from Europe, so Steinbeis, which is the coordinator of the project, CRG, the Center for Genomic Regulation in Barcelona, EVI, European Vaccine Initiative, SPI, which is both in Europe and in China, and GAC, which I'm one of the representatives today. And then we're lucky to have 5 Chinese partners, BUCM, which is Beijing University of Chinese Medicine, ST LinkedIn, the Science and Technology LinkedIn Beijing, the China National Health Development Research Center, and the China National Center for Biotechnology Development. You can say hi in the chat. Our main objective is to facilitate research collaboration and innovation collaboration, both between European and Chinese researchers and innovation stakeholders. To do so, we have three major activities. The first activity was the identification through extensive literature reviews, survey, and interviews of the common interests, challenges, and priorities in health of the European Union and of China. The second main activity is the development of the Sustainable Health Networking Hub, which is why we are here today. So this activity, we are running a series of meetings with researchers, innovation stakeholders, so policy makers and implementers, to develop at the end recommendation to support the work of the European Commission that Philippe just presented. And finally, we aim at supporting the collaborative health research initiatives in supporting concrete collaboration on activities, and I will come back to this soon. So we've written for regarding the first activity, which is the identification of challenges and priorities. As I said, we did an extensive literature review that we should actually keep updated because of all the new programs. So you can find this on our SENET website and the public reports, and I invite you to visit the website and look at our reports if you're interested in the different funding agencies and innovations policies that have been developed between the European Union and China. And then the third activity, which is the support of collaborative health research, as I said, we're trying to support collaboration, concrete collaboration on two different levels. One level is concreted by our activity called Power Partnering. We support partnerships, the creation of partnerships between European researchers and innovation stakeholders and Chinese researchers and innovation stakeholders to answer to concrete funding opportunities from the European Union or on the Chinese side. So as you know, we are all waiting the Horizon Europe program now. And we already have selected some thematics that we think will be in the work program and might be of interest both for European researchers and Chinese researchers. So we will be happy to share this list of topics with you. And if you're interested in finding Chinese partners for Horizon Europe projects, please come back to us. We would be happy to support you in finding the right partners for the right topics. And the other activity that we're running is the Ideation Hackathons. And this is the same kind of support, but not for a specific call. It is more general for more general collaboration. So if you are active in one health field and that you are searching for a closer collaboration with Chinese partners, we are here to support you in finding the good partners in China. And we hope, it can lead you to a more closer collaboration with Chinese partners. So we just had a presentation on Philippe, which explains you actually the top-down approach. So discussions that are held between the European Commission and the Chinese counterparts, notably the most. So they are defining priorities and maybe flagships. And from our side, we're trying to support this work from a bottom-up approach. So as I told you, as you know, we're organizing this kind of meetings because we would like you to give us your ideas on what would be the main priorities and the challenges you encounter to collaborate with China, and what could be your recommendation to facilitate collaboration. So you see SENET, we first did an analysis of the top-down priorities to support the conversation and discussion on the recommendation and an action plan bottom up. It's kind of a loop that we are proposing. So during the first phase of the project, we did this analysis of the top-down priorities, and we came up, so that was between the Horizon 2020 and the priorities expressed by the Healthy China 2030, which is the main long-term strategy of Chinese for health, and which was launched in 2016. And their 15th five-year health plan, which is the implementation strategy on a shorter term. To identify common research and founding priorities, we came up with three major topics: the infectious disease, chronic disease, and rare disease. So our job now is to update and refine precise these priorities. What is in chronic disease or in infectious disease really your priority? Okay, so as we already discussed now, there are new programs in development, so Horizon Europe on one side, and on the Chinese side, they are developing now their 14th five-year health plan, which is like as Horizon Europe still under discussion, but the most announced some health priorities recently, which are on the left side, and we try to match it with small knowledge, little knowledge that we have so far of the Horizon Europe program. So as you see, those are broad priorities, but that can match pretty well between the Chinese priorities and the European priorities. And we organized in June 2021 an expert meeting with researchers from Research Institute, and we asked them also what would be their priorities to collaborate between Europe and China. So they came up with 6 major priorities. And now we would like to have your feedback on these priorities and on how to facilitate the collaboration. Before giving the before letting Sonia moderate the roundtable, I would like to let Johnny introduce a special Chinese partner. Johnny, please go ahead.
Yes, hello. Thank you, Julie. Thank you, Julie, for your introduction. So hello, everyone. This is Johnny Pan. I'm from the SPI. It's the private consulting company, also one of the SENET partners. So today it's my honor to introduce from China side, we have invited Professor Chen Lijuan. You can also call her Jerry. She is from the Sichuan University, and she is the Deputy Director of the State Key Laboratory of Biotherapy. And she has ever been a chairman and the chief scientist of the Chengdu Zeling Biomedical Technology Company, and as a leader of diabetes and oncology, drug development and innovation team in Guangdong province for 5 years. And she has been engaged in development of the natural and the targeted small molecular drugs for the long time, and developed 6 innovative drug candidates. So during the roundtable discussion, we can also learn from the not only from the EU side and also the China side to learn from different health priorities in different perspectives. Thank you.
Thank you, Jenny, and welcome, Jerry.
Do you hear me now?
Yeah.
All right. Wonderful. Thank you very much. So do we start now with the roundtable discussion, Julie? Yes? Okay.
Exactly. I let you the floor.
Thank you very much. I was also feeling free to launch a poll question. I'm just showing the results here. So the question was, do you think a health-related flagship in Horizon Europe for senior European collaborations would be important, as we raised the topic with Philippe? And I'm happy that 94% said yes. Of course, it's also a bit the focus of our meeting today, but this is also important information which we can direct to the policy makers, including the European Commission. And with this, let's start a further discussion. This was just the start of a digital discussion. And I would like to invite everybody who feels comfortable to share the video for the discussion. I personally feel it's easier to discuss. If you want, if you don't want, it's of course okay as well, as I assume many of us are at home and it's private space. Thank you. So maybe we start directly with the first question. Julie, maybe you can put the question also on the screen. You don't have in the presentation. Well, it's not important. I can put it in.
I have it put
Okay.
on the screen. You don't see it?
Yeah, no, I see it. Yes,
sorry.
I didn't see it. Okay. So the first question to start with is, how do you, and here I speak about mainly your institution you're representing, how do you engage into international collaborations? So are you focusing more on these top-down strategies, as Philippe was talking about, the flagships from your funders or other local authorities? Is this important for you to get started into collaborations? Or maybe do you have more bottom-up strategies, whatever they would look like? So I want to invite you to share a bit your own strategies, and maybe you can refer to past experiences. As we are not too many, I invite you just to unmute and speak, or raise your hand. You can also answer in the chat if maybe you have audio issues, but I invite you to speak to us.
Good morning, Sonia. Can you hear me?
Yes, we hear you. Thank you, Donna.
So, hi. So I'm Donna Henderson from the Scottish Government. So just to maybe get the conversation started.
Thank you.
So in answer to this question, certainly in our experience, and I'm just talking from the perspective of digital health and care agenda, which is what my team are directly involved in. Our main route for engagement in terms of international collaboration has been to actively engage in some of the key networks that exist, predominantly in Europe, but also on an international basis. And what we found about these networks, so for example, I'll just mention the European Innovation Partnership on Active and Healthy Aging. That's a good example. And indeed, my colleague Valentina is here from the European Connected Health Alliance. In engaging in networks like those, it really has helped us to find, I suppose, partners who we have a lot in common with strategically, so that we've got similar strategic aims around health and care. And you find partners that you've got a common kind of vision and purpose for where you would like to be. You've got maybe a complementary skill set in terms of research and innovation agendas, where you can pull your stakeholders together and you can collaborate more meaningfully. So for us, in terms of our engagement, we've used those networks to try and find really good partners that fit well with what we want to do. The last thing I would say on that point is, though, that in engaging in these networks, the really important word there is engage. Don't just join and sit there and expect something to happen. You really do have to, you have to be an active participant if you want to get something useful back out of these networks. So I would say engagement is absolutely a two-way process, and you really do need to give something back if you want to get something yourself out of it.
Thank you very much, Donna. Very valuable insights. I see Olaf Müller raised his hand. Do you want to speak up?
Hi, absolutely. After being actively pushed to engaging, thanks Donna very much. I would very much like to engage and not only sit here. I fully agree with joining interesting networks like the EIP on AHA, which we are also a member of. But I would also like to add two aspects. One is what we have done in the past and have quite successfully done in the past is joining roundtables, exchange groups for exchanging good practices between partners. As the IBON AHA is one of these initiatives where it's mainly not about getting or gaining or collecting project money from, but actively exchanging ideas that have worked or have not worked elsewhere. The partnership group is very open. It's very collaborative. So it's not about competition, but it's an intensive exchange of ideas in order to make the whole better or to foster the whole. And lastly, of course, joining international project consortia always helps, because usually you meet again and again, and after the third joint project, you basically know your partners and you will exchange unofficially exchange on a bilateral basis between partners, which helps a lot.
Okay, thank you. Before giving the word to Valentina, just a question to understand well what you both said. So what I understood is you have your institutional priorities, your institutional objectives, and you use these existing networks to find collaboration partners and to be basically more effective in reaching your own objectives and goals, which I think is very clever and a good strategy. Your institutional objectives, do they very much depend on higher level priorities, or is there not a strong dependency? For example, if the European Commission and China would agree on a future flagship on infectious diseases for Horizon Europe, would this very much influence your wish to collaborate with China in this case? Or would this not have a big influence? So this question is for Olaf and Donna.
Could you repeat the question again, please?
So if higher level policies basically would affect your interest in collaborating with China, or is it mainly driven by your institutional objectives?
As my institutional objects, I'm head of a subsidiary company of a university hospital. So my main object or my mission basically is to improve healthcare in the region. So it's kind of non-competitive, so to speak. So yeah, I'm mostly interested in making the whole better, making healthcare better. So yeah, I am interested in exchange. And but also to make things work, of course. So it's kind of the drive to efficiently exchange, basically.
Okay, thank you. Donna, you want to say something?
I think in terms of your question, just the higher level policy, would that influence, you know, our desire to engage? I suppose the answer is absolutely. You know, from a government perspective, it would undoubtedly, because most of our activity, well, in fact, all of our activities are ultimately driven by policy at some level or another. So yes, I would say that it would absolutely impact on certainly my organization and our activities. So yes.
Thank you, Donna. So now Valentina, thank you for raising your hand.
Thank you, Sonia, and thank you for inviting us. Good morning, everyone. My name is Valentina Tageo. I'm the International Project Director at the European Connected Health Alliance. So maybe I will take this, the nice excuse that Donna offered me also to introduce what we are doing very briefly, because I think we can give it a different perspective, as we are actually one of those networks that Donna was mentioning. We are a membership no-profit organization, so we have right now quite large number, about 700 members across Europe, from both the private, public and profit sectors that are to different extent and with different interests operating in the digital transformation of health and care. So our focus is especially on taking advantage of the benefits of digital technologies to transform health systems and services. Let's say this is our core focus. And as you can imagine, this is a very broad area of interest for international collaboration, where learning exchanges and good practices exchanges is crucial to progress and avoid to reinvent the wheel anytime. So the mission that we gave ourselves now 10 years ago, when the organization started this journey, was trying, first of all, to facilitate at the first layer regional cooperation, because also at regional level and national level, there are still a lot of silos, and digital health implementation is really prevented by the fact that the stakeholders are not closely collaborating in the identification of their needs and priority, and try to decide together what is their pathway towards implementation. And secondly, of course, encouraging all those regional networks that we had helped to establish to interact and exchange at international level. So we are doing, of course, this also through participating in European projects, through supporting a number of stakeholder organizations, or stakeholder networks, thematic focused. We have been for years supporting the EIP on active healthy aging, but also the stakeholder network on age-friendly environment and many others. So we really try to help our national and regional ecosystems to find themselves what are the core topics they would like to work together on. And I think that I can confirm that definitely in the last year, we expanded a lot also our presence in non-EU countries. We are trying to build a global connector layer in the alliance. So any kind of collaboration and also formalization at a higher policy level, as you were mentioning, of the EU-China relations will be very beneficial, learning from the pandemic, of course.
Thank you very much, Valentina, for all these interesting information and contribution. Does somebody else want to share how you engage into international collaborations and maybe share the experiences you had so far? If not, we can maybe move on to the second question. And it was partly addressed by the speakers now in the first question, but maybe somebody else wants to add on. What is the purpose for you to specifically collaborate between China and Europe? So not only to extend in general the international collaborations, learning from best practices in other countries, but maybe now thinking about China. What is specifically interesting for you to engage into the collaborations with China, or maybe the Chinese participants here, of course, vice versa? What is the specific interest for you to collaborate with Europe? Olaf, yeah, please.
If I may, I will this time go first. I see two main drivers here. One is simply curiosity, because we haven't done before. But the other one I think is more important. As I'm from Saxony, we have quite some experience with demographic change. So population is getting older, population is thus facing a higher degree of multiple chronic conditions in becoming older, but we are also facing things like a deteriorating structural density in health and care. So this is some aspects we need to solve together. So together in the sense of at the same time. And this with a rather, let's call it, interesting health and care system in Germany, which is kind of self-governed and federal. It's a mess basically, but it's working somehow, is something that I would very much love to exchange with health and care systems that are completely different. I've loved collaborating with the Scots, for instance, with the Spanish. Also, Italy has been very interesting because these health and care systems are completely different. So their approaches differ. Like one example, Donna, please correct me if I'm telling wrong things, but introducing innovative change into health and care is something that is very complicated in Germany because the payers, the reimbursement responsible boards are very self-governed, so they can decide if they want to or not. But in the more or less state-controlled systems, like I have experienced the NHS in Great Britain or in Scotland, it's more likely if you can convince the responsible people, then it has a much higher chance to be introduced and a much higher speed to be introduced. So deviations between different systems is something that is very interesting. You can learn a lot from them.
Thank you very much. So learning from diversity and also diversity in the government for regulating healthcare. That's very interesting. Thank you for sharing. And we actually also learned from some Chinese stakeholders. They are indeed interested to do the same, to exchange about the healthcare system. And we also learned that there's quite some focus in the current strategy on chronic disease. So I do see there's some potential for exchange. There was a raised hand and it disappeared again from Donna. You say, take it back. Okay.
I don't really want Olaf and I to hog the conversation, but if no one else is chatting, then we'll just continue.
Yeah.
Yeah, I completely agree with you, Olaf. I think the real value is when you are comparing, you know, a health and care system that is so different to yours that it almost allows you then to think more broadly about, you know, which aspects of what you're learning about could be, you know, very innovative and almost disruptive within your own system. So it's actually really quite refreshing to look at something that is so different to how your own system is set up.
Yeah.
I would just touch on the point that Olaf made there about you know, a system like the NHS system. Certainly what we have found in Scotland, because we're a small country, we have a small population, that you know, that it is often easier to implement a particularly, you know, successful approach. I would say that we've found that even more in response to COVID. You know, we've seen national rollout of digital solutions that would have taken us previously years to roll out, just because it's, you know, to change the system and behavior is actually quite challenging, as we all know. But actually, when there's a compelling need, like reacting quickly to something like COVID, that really has meant that we have been able to escalate rollout at a great pace of certain solutions, particularly digital health solutions, where we've been trying to minimize face-to-face contact for obvious reasons. So yeah, that's been very interesting, actually, seeing how it is absolutely possible to effect change quickly if the conditions are right. And I would say that that's not unique to us. That must be the case internationally. But certainly, yes, I think one of the real purposes or values in us collaborating with our colleagues in China would absolutely be, as Olaf says, about the fact that the aging population, our aging population, we have to really think very differently about how we are dealing with our changing demographic. And I think there would be huge value in us collaborating on that front.
Yeah, thank you.
Maybe
you, Donna.
just to add to that comment, thank you, Donna, because things like national rollout is something that is not happening in Germany. See, the COVID situation, we would have loved to use, for instance, video consultation for GPs or other ambulatory patient treatment, just to reduce physical contact. Something that there are existing solutions for. This is something trivial, actually, but there's no federal regulation on reimbursement or how to safely do that. So this is exactly my point. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Olaf. So we have a raised hand from Stefan.
Yes, this was a question to both of you, follow-up question to Olaf and Donna. Maybe so. I mean, I agree. And I can imagine it's very easy in Europe now. You are interested in, as a German, you are keen to learn about Scotland, etc. That's pretty straightforward. I think we are used to this kind of. But is this similarly easy now to say, let me see what I can find in China? Do you think it's because this is a different mentality, different language? Very far away, so totally different from the European context. Nevertheless, for you, do you think it's relatively easy to do this, to reach out and find your Chinese counterpart, let's say, and come to and dig deep enough on the questions you're interested in to get what you want? I mean, do you know what I mean? Is this?
Yeah, I know what you mean. It is not only cultural differences and language differences. It's more likely the approach to solving the, I guess, same issues. Like, how do you deal with health and care in non-urban settings, for instance? I mean, even in urban settings, the approaches might be completely different than ours, because we think what we are doing is the only approach. This is basically the same for mostly all historic European health and care systems. But through comparison, we see that there's other solutions. There's things that have worked or not worked in other systems. And from that, I think personally, you learn a lot. So I don't know the Chinese approach to specific health and care solutions, but I would love to learn it, because the economy, the Chinese country is huge. They have different population densities, for instance, between different areas of the country, with arising different health and care, structural and demographic problems. So this is something that I can imagine I can learn a lot from, and to take home, to introduce in our specific health and care concepts in Saxony or in Germany.
Okay, thank you. We have Hele, who raised her hand.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Just a kind of a small reaction to the question of culture and finding partners in China. In our experience, and we do not have a lot of experience, but we do have one current cooperation with the hospital in China, where we have an exchange of doctors coming. Well, we haven't had that for a year now, but before that, for quite some years, we've had the doctors traveling back and forth, performing surgeries, and we also had PhD students from China in Denmark, a couple of them, and what I have experienced from that is that the main obstacle is to have prepared and learned about Chinese culture in advance. Because if you do not understand how to say hello, basically, and how to engage with other people in China or another culture.
Mm-hmm. Okay, Hella, do you hear us? You were interrupted.
No way into collaborate yeah.
Okay, you were shortly interrupted, but I think the message was that we cannot expect to have a very good collaboration if we don't know the basics of the culture of the collaborator, and this should be addressed probably in advance, not once you visit each other in a hospital setting and you expect to collaborate, right? So there should be some work be done before. Thank you very much, very valuable comment.
Maybe, sorry, if can I interrupt?
Yeah.
I would like Helle to ask you, how did you do that? How did you prepare in advance your collaborators in the collaboration?
Well, the doctor who sort of initiated this collaboration was fortunate enough that our head of university, he was there. He was in China with our head of university, the local university with whom we collaborate, and his wife is Chinese. So he had an insider, so to speak. I mean, no, but they were they were actually walked hand in hand through meeting and speaking and how to react and how to respond and where to sit and because there's there's also well, as there are in any country in the world, actually, basically there are codes of conduct which you have to learn. And the code of conducts are different in China from what they are in France and in Denmark. So but as he tells me now, that this doctor, that nowadays he is giving courses to people who wants to go to China and find partners for collaboration in different fields. So Danish companies, Danish doctors, anything that wants to go, he is giving courses. And yeah, so yes, with that.
Okay, thank you.
I think this collaboration has been running for now 8 years successfully, actually. Yes, thank you.
Perfect, thank you. That's very good insights. I have a message that Kian Wan would like to speak up, please, now. Yes, Kian Wang, can you speak? Oh, unfortunately, we don't hear you. Maybe now? If you want, you can also write in the chat. Hello?
No.
No. Yeah, now.
Double diamond thing.
Okay, we don't hear you. So maybe you can write in the chat your question or your comment. This would be lovely. Thank you. Just before moving to the next question, I wanted to ask, because we talked a lot about healthcare system exchange and hospitals, it's healthcare, right? If you have any experience or any interest in more research focused collaborations, so probably.
I think the SENET model is maybe the the simplest one we can follow, because other process model, they have like more process, more stages. Yeah, and it's very simple and clear.
I'm not sure if I heard the whole comment, so can you please repeat? Okay, no, I'm sorry. I didn't get the full message. Maybe you can also type it in the chat so we have the full comment. So I got the answer in the chat related to the question on more research related topics. So from the Scottish government, there is the interest on research and digital healthcare agenda. Are there any other topics where you feel senior European collaborations would have a big impact? I'm inviting everybody to react to this. Okay, there are no additional comments on this.
I would like to ask an additional comment to this, if I may, Sonia. I think we also have representatives here from networks or institutions who are intermediaries between policy and ecosystems, from research and innovation. So academics, research institutions, companies. And I was wondering if for you, collaboration with China should well, you would see it more successful on a research topic, or rather related to more innovation topics, maybe closer to the market? Especially in health, of course, but feel free to mention other topics if you feel that's relevant. I'm afraid I can't see the participants list, so can't address someone specific.
If you click on the participants button, you see all the participants.
Someone has typed something in the chat. I think maybe it was before my question.
Yeah, it's about the digital health and care.
Yeah, right.
Yes.
Yeah, that was digital health and care.
Maybe, Julia, if you do stop sharing your screen, we can see more participants.
Yeah, you can also do that. You can have the screen and the gallery view, then you see also everybody. But I agree, we don't really need the shared screen. Okay, so there's no comment here. Well, there's a comment in the chat. Maybe some, I think there's more information provided on international collaborations in the field of health information and medicine information exchange. Yeah, IMI project. Yeah, we will check the resource. This sounds interesting as well. Maybe we advance with the questions we want to discuss with you, and which is interesting. You already addressed partly. So the next question would be, what are existing barriers in collaboration between China and Europe? And the one which was shared was already the limitation of not understanding or not knowing the other culture. And as we are quite diverse in this respect, the recommendation was already to get prepared and learn the other culture to have better collaborations. What other barriers did you experience in your past, or you are maybe afraid of, and which is making you hesitative to go into a collaboration? Does someone want to share on that? We heard Philippe talking about that they are focusing actually on the framework conditions in the roadmap between China and Europe science collaboration, science and innovation collaborations. So I think this is very much going to this direction. Yeah, Julie, you want to say something?
No, actually, I wanted to ask someone more specifically, Mariela Deliverska. As the medical ethic and law professor, you probably have some interesting insight on these questions.
Yes, hello to everyone. I hope you do hear me now. Yes, actually, currently I believe that there are some barriers. Most of them have been already outlined in the discussion, of course. Mainly the dimensions, because as we know, the problems and the challenges which we are facing are pretty much the same everywhere, all over the world. But the dimensions, the way the different healthcare systems have been prepared to face these dimensions, and also the framework of the legislation, mostly, especially in countries where not adequate actions have been taken so far as regard to preparing the legislation to answer this such frequent emergency situations that we have been facing, has been causing some difficulties in regarding to collaboration to the full extent. Because the actual truth is that in areas outside of the healthcare system, like in different fields of science, also in collaboration regarding technology exchange, knowledge and activities, very fruitful cooperation has been going on mostly on bilateral levels. My experience, which I can share, of course, is from a different perspective as a researcher and academic and professor of law, of course. We're in the last couple of years, I've been doing lots of research and teaching and being involved in education as part of the academic member of the Medical University in Sofia. Of course, we are always open to collaboration in parts of higher education. And research, of course, but as far as research is concerned, I have an experience, on the other hand, as a representative of the government, because several years ago, I have been head of the Science and Innovation Directorate at the Ministry of Education and Science in Bulgaria. Back since 2014 and on, when the previous framework program in Europe for innovation and education has been going on. And back then, on a bilateral cooperation between Bulgaria and China. Many different activities have been going on, but trying to exactly overcome these unfamiliar issues, not only as regard to culture, but also as regard to the system of education and system of innovation and research has been functioning in a country where the dimensions are much broader than in a small European country as Bulgaria. But I believe that throughout the years, especially facing the current challenges in which we have been living on for the last year or so with the pandemic, and with the need of really focused actions, I believe that this collaboration within the different fields in a country, internationally within the European region, and worldwide in regard to cooperation in Europe and China, has taught us a lot. And I believe also that in the future months and years to come, also the legislative framework will become much more flexible, so to be able to facilitate the fruitful results, and also to be able to introduce the results from the collaboration into practice. Because many of the obstacles we have been facing is, although we do reach positive results, the activities need to be slowed down or put on to hold, so the legal framework be appropriate to be introduced into practice. And currently it is really needed to speed up the time of introducing the results into practice.
Thank you very much, Mariella. Very good contribution, highlighting the importance of the legislative framework and going for the change, allowing the change to happen, which we learn from each other. Thank you very much. Does somebody else wants to share restrictions for Sino-European collaborations? Okay. If not, we can move on. So we were discussing a bit about potential topics related to health. What did we mention? We said healthcare in general, aging was mentioned, and digital solutions for healthcare. Can you think of any topic where you feel that for China and Europe, the collaboration would create a win-win situation? So where, and maybe it also refers a bit to the comment my colleague Eva had before. It could be on more research-related topics, but maybe it could also be more on the innovation side, closer to the market. So also to consider this. So Helle, yeah, please.
Sorry. Well, it isn't actually up to, well, it isn't actually research and innovation in a sense, but in small steps it is, because the valuable part of, oh, sorry, the valuable part of the exchange that we have had with the Chinese is, of course, both research, because there was 2 PhD programs. Also, we're a very small region in Denmark, so doing research can be difficult because we have very little patients, very little data to work on with. Whereas if we collaborate with a country like with even a region in China, we will simply multiply it phenomenally, and that everybody would benefit from this, because the Chinese, of course, will also have the research results, and the amount of data will be hugely improved for us. And also little practical, little research, little innovation steps are taken every time people are together, doing things together and speaking. So from what I've heard, it's been a talk across the surgery table, and suddenly there's a solution on things that wouldn't have been there if people weren't together.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Sonia, sorry to interrupt. May I follow up question to Helle?
I see your question, please.
Okay, well, no, it's not the one that I tapped in the chat.
Okay.
We can go to that after the. Helle, I just want to, for my understanding, because you mentioned the data exchange as something that would be useful for you. Did you mean data exchange in the frame of a joint research project, let's say? Or do you mean data exchange beyond that? Because people tend to say that data exchange with China is rather problematic. So I was a bit surprised by this.
I was thinking in a research for a research objective, because of course at the moment now data exchange is completely hopeless because of the GPDR.
That's why I was wondering. Okay.
Yes.
Okay, so you were thinking of a specific research collaboration where you can access a bigger group of use cases, let's say, patients or whatever it is. Okay, very good.
Yes, exactly. Yes, thank you.
Okay, thank you. So now I think the last question.
Maybe, Sonia, sorry to interrupt, but I would like, because we have other participants that we didn't hear so far, but are more representative of the innovation side. So I would like to know if, for example, Alfonso or Stephanie are there, and if they could also give us their feedback.
Hi, everybody. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
Hello.
Hi. I actually have been listening more than speaking because I'm learning a lot. So that's why I'm silent, a little bit silent. So I'm a member. I'm a national contact point for the health sector for Horizon Europe, and I'm working in an agency for innovation and biomedical innovation in Portugal. So my role is really on intermediary between the European programs and the stakeholders, and showing stakeholders in research and innovation in Portugal mainly now how they can obtain the funds from Europe and create new networks. So the interest here, I think it's very high on looking at collaboration with China because it's a new market and thinking about innovation, it's a very important market, of course. And thinking about one of the questions that was raised a couple of minutes ago regarding the importance of the areas and if we should focus on specific topics that researchers would address to make this bridge with China, or versus having an open market and having not a challenge-based funding or initiatives. I think it really depends. So for example, in the area of digital health, what I see, and this is the experience, what I see in the field, it's not saying that I think it's the best way, it's what I see from the stakeholders I contacted with, is that, for example, in digital health, we have lots of stakeholders that are interested on really making a bridge with China because for some reasons they're already developing some collaborations with them in terms of research and digital related research and teaching. So for example, universities that have already protocols with some Chinese universities take the advantage of these protocols to also bridge in terms of research. And I think that's very important because then it comes up as a whole. So it's research plus higher education, and this is very important for some universities. And I think the other aspect regarding research is that research is worldwide. So there is a need to be open and inclusive. So it's very important for the researchers, at least the stakeholders I'm contacting with, to have this access to knowledge and share ideas. So it's very important to have these conferences, for example, some things that are as simple as International Conference Europe/China that put together these two communities, these two very big communities and very active communities, and bring them together. So I think those are the two main ideas I would bring into this discussion, because that's the feeling I have from the community I'm following.
Thank you very much, Alfonso. So Julie, you asked address another person. Who was that?
Yeah, Stephanie.
Stephanie, you want to? No.
I see her disconnected now. She was connected a few minutes ago.
Okay.
She wanted to escape.
So maybe we can elaborate a bit more on the comment from Alfonso and also think about to which extent higher level authorities from your authorities, local authorities, or whoever it might be, can support you in the needs you have towards collaborations. So there's a question by Donna. Can I just check what you mean by support measures? Do you mean collaboration platforms, funding programs? Yeah, I think this is these are good examples of support measures which a policymaker could provide.
Yeah, Donna, because you were asking me to make it clear. Yeah, I thought of specific framework programs, coordinated calls, co-funding mechanisms, but could also be just being sure that there's an alignment in the strategies on both sides, so they're the same calendars that can be real interaction, joint results, and also framework measures that help structuring of data, IPR agreements, etc. And also possibly also maybe administrative support, for example, for mobility programs or similar aspects. I was wondering if that was something that you thought was not developed enough, or if you think it's already well done, or what would be improvements that you could see?
Yeah, Donna, please.
I think there are, in terms of is it already done, I think there are probably some good examples of where it has been already done. But yeah, we could definitely benefit from more. I mean, I think somebody touched on it earlier around, you know, how do you make the right connections at the right levels? And I think that's why I kind of mentioned collaboration platform. I'm not quite sure that that's actually the right the right solution here, but in terms of being able to make the connections, I think support around you know, being able to facilitate that, you know, being able to connect with the right people would be helpful. I'm not quite sure how we do that, but yeah, that certainly from our perspective would be useful.
Yeah, thank you. There's another dimension probably about collaboration. So you might find the right context and the right collaborator, maybe through a collaborative project, maybe through contacts or whoever this happens. But we were also thinking about sustainability. So do you have needs to maintain collaborations where you're interested on? Do you miss the measures, you know, like funding mainly, I would say, to maintain interesting and valuable collaborations? Is this a restriction for your collaborations? Talking to anybody here in the forum. Do you have the feeling, yes, I would like to collaborate, but I cannot? And what is holding you back? Is it funding? Is it problems about mobility? Because we heard about the doctor exchange, and I think that there needs to be a lot in place to make this happen, right? That the doctors go back and forward from one hospital to the other. Is this well enough supported? Does it work on the institutional level for the collaboration, or is there anything where you would say, yes, if my region, if my country would support this mobility between doctors by providing mobility programs, funding, cultural training, is there anything you would ask your policymakers? If you would have a wish free, what would you ask for? What is your wish list?
Maybe we could ask the persons that were more quiet so far. I would like to ask Anaïs, Sarah, Eugenio.
Maybe I could turn the question around a little bit for Sarah and Eugenio, because I know that you are working on international collaboration with China, more related to supporting companies. And I was wondering, in line with Sonia's question, but maybe not referring to researchers' mobility, but the access of companies, especially small companies, to this big country of China, which is possibly for some difficult. If you did not have the program that you're working in of the cluster partnerships, do you think these companies would be able to collaborate with Chinese counterparts, or what would be additional support measures that you would require to be able to support them better?
I don't know if my audio works now.
Yes. Yeah, perfect.
Okay. Because I had to reconnect a few times. I had some issues. So I think, I mean, especially for the smaller companies, it would be a huge challenge, because it's a country that's so big and it's so overwhelming for a smaller company at first to you know, get a good grasp on where the opportunities are. Specifically for medtech companies, there's a huge regulatory challenge. Getting your product certified is a long journey. So I guess they would probably still try to enter the market, but it would be more challenging because if every company has to do their own research from scratch, it's of course a lot of effort that has to be done. If there's to a certain extent, a common pathway. So if up until a certain point, people can go the journey together, learn about the regulatory aspects and so on, and then do the homework from then on, it's of course easier because they can use their resources for where it really matters. So I think if we didn't have this program that we're working in, it would be a lot more challenging for our companies to tackle this kind of this path. Or Jenny, if you want to add something, please feel free. Yeah, I guess that's my perspective on that. And I wrote in the chat quite a while ago, I do agree a lot with what Olaf said in the beginning, that working groups can be hugely helpful for companies. Also, I noticed that in our works that if people talk to like-minded companies, that already helps, to just share some experiences, maybe avoid some pitfalls. So I think that's a big part also on what we do as clusters in our daily work.
Yeah, great. That's very interesting, Sarah. Thank you. Do you think also that, I know you're somehow the intermediaries between the companies and the policymakers, also because you certainly interact with them, at least on regional level, maybe national level. And do you think that there's more support needed, or like the approach that you're having and the exchange that you're having with the policymakers, is it taking enough notice of your suggestions or your feedback that you're providing bottom up, collecting it from the ecosystem?
You mean in terms of clusters, or?
Yeah, because you as a cluster, I guess, maybe I'm wrong, but tell me if I'm wrong. But
I just don't know if I could.
Collecting information from the ecosystem on challenges, on maybe strategic topics that they would like to see implemented for a specific collaboration, and you somehow provide this feedback to the policy level, so it could be taken into account for any kind of measures. And do you think it's a well-working mechanism? Is there anything you would need from the policy side to support you in this process for the collection of information, but also for taking it on into policy decisions?
I think we do that more in other aspects of our work. So for instance, we have collected quite a bit of feedback from companies on the medical device regulation, on the timelines for that, which was very challenging for companies. But I don't think that we have that much influence when it comes to internationalization, because obviously, the kind of the playing field is fixed. You have certain regulatory aspects that you have to comply with. There are certain things, and I don't know if policymakers would go to that kind of bottom level to collect the feedback from companies. What's challenging for them. Obviously, on a regional level, if we talk to our regional governments, which we are very much in touch with, they are very interested in the challenges that local companies have. But going then to the next level, like a federal government, or even beyond that, I don't know if the specific concerns that a medtech company has are that influential. So I think we can more do something on a regional level, trying to pave the way with our regional governments. But I don't know if Brussels can go into that much detail on, a medtech company has that challenge and a textile company has a completely different challenge. So I think that's something where we can't really, like on that higher level, we can't do much about it.
Okay, yeah, thank you.
But again, if anybody disagrees, feel free to.
Thank you very much. These are very valuable insights, and all of the contributions which we collected today and in other meetings, also with other stakeholders, we will bring it together and put it into the SENET roadmap and recommendations towards policymakers. We try to give all of it a voice, basically. So, and we will share the report of today's meeting with you, where you will have another chance maybe to add on the discussion we had today, or maybe to correct something which we might have misunderstood. So this will be another way to collect more information, also maybe from people today who eventually had audio issues or didn't feel like sharing the experience today. So the group discussion, I would close it here and would thank you all very much for the contributions. It was very interesting for us. You see that several of us from the SENET team got very interested and excited, and we had many questions to you. Yeah, so I think I would hand over with this to Eva, who will try to summarize a bit the main conclusions. Yeah, Eva, please.
Yeah, thank you, Sonia. I'm not sure you can hear me.
Yeah, we hear you. Thank you.
Okay, very good. Can you see my screen?
Yes, it's not full screen mode
Yeah, let
yet.
me try to make it on full mode. Is it good now?
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you. Well, yeah, thanks a lot to everyone for this very interesting exchange and these good suggestions. And we're indeed trying to take them up. And I'm trying to wrap up now. So please bear with me if I may have omitted anything or if the structure is not optimal, but we're trying to translate that later on in a report. And of course, if you do not agree on anything that I'm summarizing now, then please feel free to speak up. So I think this is a major takeaway from Philip Vialat's presentation, where we have heard that indeed the Commission or the representation of the Commission in China is very much seeking for collaboration on a policy level, but they consider that the framework conditions need to be met in order to allow for successful collaboration between researchers and innovation actors. So indeed, it seems EU-China collaboration is very much desired and considered as being required to tackle global challenges, but that on a policy level, an agreement can only be found if it is a balanced collaboration, so with partners playing on a being on a level playing field. And indeed, this of course requires that there is some kind of win-win approach taken so collaboration can be successful. And these framework conditions that are currently under discussion relate mainly to IPR issues, ethics, open science, mobility of researchers, access to public markets, and so on. And we have heard that only when these framework conditions are agreed, the thematic priority topics and possibly flagship initiatives will be agreed. And possibly these could relate to climate change, biodiversity, and health, but it's indeed apparently still under discussion. Now, more on the discussion points and conclusions from the presentation, but especially also from the discussion that we had in this moderated exchange. We have heard that the top-down strategies are demanded to foster collaboration. Official communication needs to encourage collaboration, so it needs to be clear and positive about collaboration with the other side. We've heard that all activities from policy actors are driven by policy, so top-down strategies would of course influence very much the activity, and the topics of joint interest need to be identified, for example, flagships or otherwise around strategic priority areas would orient the joint RDI activity. We've heard also regarding the engagement in international key networks and groups of exchange, and that this is very relevant to find collaboration partners because it allows to find partners with a joint vision and purpose, possibly also with complementary skills for R&D agendas and joint projects. It is a platform for exchange of good practices and ideas, and getting feedback from different perspectives, but that it is of course important that there's a real engagement and not only just say silent participation, as Donna mentioned. And the joint network's objectives are aligned with institutional objectives, which is obviously important to be able to go in the same direction, hand in hand. And because of the network supports its members to engage in collaboration projects, this is a good means to find collaboration partners, also internationally. And we have spoken about the specific purpose of collaboration with China. We've heard that facing of challenges that need to be tackled at the same time, for example, the changing demographics and also the question of the health and care systems can allow an exchange on good practices and learning, not only from the same kind of systems, but especially also from systems that might be quite different. And a participant has mentioned that the exchange on the topic the approach that's taken on the topic in a rural setting is specifically interesting. We've heard also of the importance of the Chinese market, of course, when especially it comes to more innovation and close to market related activities. The specific topics that have been mentioned was that it is always a specific value to compare the experience from different countries and systems, because this specifically allows to hear different perspectives and consider ideas that may be far from what someone else, what yourself might have had in mind. So this allows for disruptive innovation. And the specific topics that have been mentioned were the health and care systems, research mobilities. We've spoken about the doctors and PhDs. We've heard about the digital health and care agenda. The challenges related to pandemics seem to be interesting for collaboration between Europe and China. And research collaboration allows for access to larger databases and exchange on them, because China has, of course, a very large population. Then we have also heard about the bottom-up initiatives that can foster joint research, development, and innovation projects. We've heard that these bottom-up initiatives generally emerge through personal contacts, and that they are ideal to learn about the cultural aspects and also to create and enhance trust, of course, which is important for collaboration aspects. The bottom-up initiatives are good for bilateral, twinning, mobility activities. Also higher education was mentioned. Also support activities from multipliers that accompany RDI actors in collaboration. But we've heard also that these bottom-up initiatives can only be fruitful if the top-down approach does not hinder them. So if there is a facilitating framework condition and there's no contradiction of the objectives between the top-down and the bottom-up approach. If I'm too quick, you stop me or interrupt me. Feel free, please. I can't see if anyone is raising a hand or so. Yeah, we have also spoken about restrictions of barriers to EU-China collaboration. And we've heard that it's important to address them in advance or to feel accompanied when addressing such a collaboration. We've spoken several times about legislation, standardization, regulation, certifications, and these kind of aspects that are somehow on a higher level that could possibly hinder fruitful collaboration. We've heard about ethics issues, IPR data management issues. That was also part of the presentation from Philippe Vialet. We've heard about language barriers, but especially the lack of knowledge or a certain uncertainty regarding cultural aspects, which are certainly rather different in Europe and in China, and that need to be taken into account for collaboration, especially also that there's a long way to trust for such an international collaboration. We've heard about the non-alignment of strategies, or if there's a non-alignment of funding programs or calls, and difficulties of finding appropriate collaboration partners. But we've heard, as I said at the beginning, that networks, for example, can be a very good approach to interact with potential partners. We have also heard about the lack of information on funding opportunities, but we hope that that's not a major aspect. Then we have spoken about the fact that top-down strategies need to be translated into concrete support measures or incentives. Again, the framework programs with possibly coordinated calls or known co-funding mechanisms can help structuring a collaboration approach. we have heard also that the programs can help providing a common pathway for a group of people, let's say. So we've heard about the companies in particular here, because going together is easier than approaching a very large market as China on its own. So helpful to have some kind of structuring program that provides this pathway. The top-down strategies need nevertheless to be to ensure that there's an alignment of the joint activities on both sides. We've heard also that collaboration platforms are helpful to make sure that the collaboration can be implemented in a successful way. And another aspect that was mentioned was that intermediaries such as classes have a strong interaction with regional policymakers, but there is little influence, sorry for the typo, little influence to higher policy level. So food for thought that possibly there needs to be more connection between the lower level, the ecosystem level, and the higher policy level. I hope I have summed up more or less all the discussion. I'd very much welcome if anyone wants to add something to this, comment. All right, if that's not the case.
No comment, thank you.
Okay, thank you for the comment of no comment. Very good, that's helpful. Yeah, let me thank you again for your participation and the real engagement in the discussion. And as my colleagues have mentioned before, we will make sure to share the report that we will be preparing on the basis of this discussion, and also gather further feedback from you through the sharing of this information, if you wish to provide us more in feedback on experience, etc. Also, let me invite you to stay updated on SENET and its activities, because as Julie has mentioned before, we have some interesting activity hoping to support you in collaborating with the Chinese counterparts, or with the European counterparts for the Chinese participants. So there is some information coming up, so please make sure you stay connected, subscribe to the newsletter, or follow us on the social media networks. And don't hesitate to come back to us also by email, of course, if you have any suggestion or comment or anything you would like to share with us. So yeah, I think it's a moment to thank you all on behalf of SENET. Stay safe. I think that's important to say during these times, and we hope to be in touch with you again. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.